Check, check, check. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Environment and Climate Change Committee of February 18th, 2025. It's great to see those who are able to make it today in person. I know there's some councillors that are late because of the weather and getting through all that snow, but they're going to arrive shortly, and I see other councillors online as well. So welcome to everyone who's able to make it. I see the vice chair walking in now. Before we start the meeting, I just wanted to recognize the significant and multiple snowfalls which have impacted the city and our transportation system, our transportation chair here as well, and the environmental impact of what's been occurring. People have really been helping one another get through this and been patient. And a huge thank you to our snow operations teams who have been working nonstop to clean up and remove the snow. It's going to take some time, they're telling us, but they will get through it. I will say that my kids are a bit sad that there's the 8-foot snowbanks on my street are going to be removed at some point. So they would like them to stay, but they need to go. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all the teams working on this and to the transportation crew for all the work that they've done through a really challenging period for the city. I also, just before we start, wanted to welcome new committee members, Councillors Lane Johnson and Councillors Wilson Lowe. Welcome to committee. You're new after the midterm governance, and really looking forward to working with both of you. And then with that, I also wanted to just thank our committee coordinator, Chris, who it's his last meeting with us today and has done an amazing job working with us, I think, for the last 7 years almost. We've worked together, chair, vice chair, and we'll be missing you. But we'll also be getting, I think, Melinda, who's coming in as our community coordinator. So good luck with your new roles. And Chris, you're going over to ARAC and keeping your role at EPPS. So we'll miss you too. Thank you for all you've done over the last several years. I do want to recognize that our meeting today is taking place on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. And with that, I think we're going to go through our roll call now. So Chris, over to you for roll call.
Councillor Brown?
Here.
Councillor Curry?
Here.
Councillor Devine?
Here.
Councillor Hill?
Present.
Councillor Johnson?
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Present.
Councillor King?
Here.
Councillor Lowe?
Here.
Councillor Luloff? Councillor Tierney?
Present.
Vice Chair Carr?
Present.
And Chair Menard.
Present.
You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, can we confirm the minutes of Tuesday, November 19th, 2025? Thank you for that. There was a response to inquiries on lighting conversion, so thank you to staff for highlighting that. I know the media picked up on that as well, and good news stories all around saving money over time on lighting conversions and reducing GHGs. So we're going to move through some of the agenda, and there's a couple procedural motions that'll come forward when we get to those items. The first one is actually the Public Works 5.1 new tree dedication program. So Vice Chair Carl, I'll just ask you now to allow for the motion that would allow this to come to the agenda first, if you can read that in.
Absolutely. Be it resolved that the Environment and Climate Change Committee approve that the rules of procedure be waived subject to subsection 83(4)(a) of the procedure bylaw, being bylaw number 2022-410, to receive a staff presentation on the city's new tree dedication program.
Okay, is that carried? Thank you for that.
Carried.
Thank you. And on item 6.1, the Residential Protective Plumbing and Compassionate Grant Program, review and propose bylaw and program updates. We do have a delegation for that item, so we'll hold and come back to that. The next item up is the sewer use bylaw review. I understand there's no presentation, no delegations. Can we carry this bylaw review?
Carried.
Thank you very much. and appreciate staff's work with committee members on that item. The next item is the landfill gas utilization agreement extension. There is a delegation on that item, so we will come back to that. And there is the status update, Environment and Climate Change Committee inquiries and motions, as well as information previously distributed on the annual drinking water source protection status. Thank you to staff for their continued work to protect municipal waters and keep the city in alignment with provincial legislation. And then there is the Solid Waste Services legislative look ahead. So we'd also need to pass a motion to get that on the floor as well. So Councillor Vice Chair Carr, if you're able to read a motion, staff wanted to walk through that legislative look ahead with us.
Whereas the following reference document, provided via link within the IPD document, was not formatted to be public-facing document and was therefore not accessible to members of the public with the circulation of the agenda package, Document 1, list of all actions within their corresponding action suite. Therefore, be it resolved that the Environment and Climate Change Committee approve the addition of this document for consideration by the committee at today's meeting pursuant to Section 89.3 of the Procedure Bylaw, being Bylaw number 2022-410.
Okay, is that motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you for that. There's a second motion on that item to raise it, I believe.
Got my 6.1, which reads like.
Yes, if you can just read that in.
Okay. That pursuant to subsection 89.3 of the Procedure Bylaw, being Bylaw number 2022-410, the Environment and Climate Change Committee approved that the rules of procedure be suspended to allow for the consideration of the items listed as information previously distributed. 10.2, Solid Waste Services 2025 Legislative Look Ahead.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair. Any questions or comments? Is that carried? Okay.
Carried.
Much. And then I've got a motion at the end of the meeting that we'll walk through briefly as well, item 11.1. So we're going to move back to the first item on our agenda, which is the Public Works new tree dedication program. So I'll just ask staff to come up. And Alain, I believe you wanted to mention something off of the top, so I'll turn it over to you to start before we get to the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So just as Allison Down, the Director of Park Maintenance and Forestry, and also Tracy Schwetz are settling in, I want to say thank you to the Chair and Committee for allowing us to do a presentation. We're actually not here to seek approval on anything. This is something that Council actually approved in 2024 in terms of the new commemorative tree program. And normally after we get Council approval, we would just go ahead and just implement the program. But when the staff basically provided an overview of what had been implemented, I thought it was worth presenting to committee. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of client centricity in terms of what was rolled out. And I thought it was important to be able to showcase that to committee this morning. So with that, we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for that. I'll hand it over to staff, Allison Downs and Tracy Schwetz.
Merci, Alain. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président et membres de la comité. Je suis heureuse d'être ici aujourd'hui pour donner un aperçu de notre programme d'arbres hommage. As Alain mentioned, last year we began work on the tree planting strategy, which is a key project of the UFMP, the Urban Forest Management Plan, and the refresh of the commemorative tree program was part of that. This refresh has us an opportunity to streamline the administrative processes. And as Alain mentioned, it's quite innovative. There are many people behind the scenes who made this program refresh possible. So just a big shout out to the many members of our Public Works team and also partners in information technology services, new services, who contributed their expertise for this program launch. Tracy is going to share some of the program highlights with you today. So over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Ali. Next slide. The goal of the tree dedication program is to contribute to the enhancement of the urban forest while providing meaningful dedications to people and events. To achieve this goal, eligibility for the program has been expanded to include more types of dedications and plant more trees. The program now has two streams: community dedications and personal dedications. Next slide. There are several new features, improvements, and efficiencies with the tree dedication program. The former commemorative tree program was solely to commemorate an individual that had passed away. Eligibility for the program has been expanded and now includes milestones, like anniversaries, birthdays, and other accomplishments. The hard costs of the program were reviewed and are now being fully recovered through the cost of the dedication. The planting sites can now be chosen from predetermined locations across the city, which reduces staff time for multiple site visits with each client and also reduces the time it takes for a client to have their dedication approved for planting. As predetermined planting sites have already been circulated internally and approved, there is the added benefit of extending the cutoff time prior to planting, allowing residents to request their tree closer to the spring and fall planting seasons. Right now, there are 24 parks, one in each ward, with over 300 planting locations available, and new tree locations and parks will be added over time. As well, staff are now collecting those locations using a GPS tool on their phones. This has created efficiencies for our tree inventory management. We now have an online interactive map for site selection linked to a new online application form. These tools have streamlined the intake process for both the client and for staff. The former program did not have an online payment option. However, clients will now be able to pay online using a credit card, in addition to the option to pay in person at a client service center. There are new ways that tree dedications will be recognized, and I'll go on the following slides. Under the previous program, the clients were responsible for purchasing the plaques. For community dedications, the purchase of plaques will now be done by the city, reducing multiple points of contacts with vendors. The program also aligns with the new municipal commemoration policy, and a new vetting process has been established for community dedications in collaboration with staff in recreation, cultural, and facility services. The program will continue charitable tax donation receipts to clients, and at this time, there's no additional staff required to implement the program. Next slide. There are a few ways that the tree dedications will be recognized. We call these tree identifiers. On this slide, you can see the tags that will be placed on trees for all dedications, both personal and community. These are small metal tags that identify the tree as a dedicated tree. Each tag has a unique identification number, which supports our inventory management. And this number is searchable by staff in our inventory and work management systems. So if a client or member of the public has an inquiry about a tree, we can always find the information on that tree and where it's located. The tags are also bilingual, with English on one side and French on the other. For community dedications, there will be a plaque installed at the base of the tree. These are the same black granite plaques that we use for our former commemorative tree program. As I mentioned, the plaques will be purchased and installed by forestry staff, and they will also be bilingual. The third identifier is for both personal and community dedications, and it will be an online map on ottawa.ca. And we'll see an example of this map after we walk through the application process. Next slide. This is the landing page on ottawa.ca. The shortcut is ottawa.ca/tree dedication. Each of the tiles provides information about the program. When the client clicks on apply, it takes them to the interactive map. From this map, there are 3 ways to search for a tree. You can pan around the map. You can click on the Find My Location button on the top right corner and be brought to the closest park in relation to your current location. Or you can enter the address in the search field. For example, if we enter 100 Constellation Drive, the map will zoom to the closest park to that address. In this case, it's Centrepoint Park. Once in the park, the client can zoom in further and open the legend. The circles are those locations that are available for personal dedications, and community dedications are represented by diamonds and are in locations that are accessible close to pathways or sidewalks. You can toggle on the aerial photo to see landmarks in the park like pathways or other features. At the bottom of the map, the trees are shown in a table form with the type of dedication and the 3 options for species for each location. The client can either reserve their tree from the table or by choosing on the map and clicking Reserve Tree. After reserving the tree, the application form pops up. The client then completes the application form with their name, what the dedication is for, and other information. The form also auto-populates the reference number, which is the unique identification number in our tree inventory. They select their first, second, and third choice of species. And species options have been determined based on site conditions with species diversity in mind. The client enters their contact information and accepts the terms and conditions. After submitting the form, they receive a confirmation that the application has been received. Next slide, please. Following submission, the client will be contacted by forestry staff to move forward with their application. They will make a deposit to reserve their location, and forestry staff will schedule the tree planting for the next available planting season, either spring or fall. The tree is planted and final payment is made. For community dedications, the plaque will be installed after the tree is planted. The last step is for a tax receipt to be issued to the client, as tree dedications are considered a charitable donation. Next slide. Once the tree is planted, the dedication will be available on the online mapping tool. This is a mock-up of the map that is still under development. However, it will show the location of the tree identification number, the type of dedication, who the dedication is for, and the year. The dedication will also be listed in a table at the bottom of the map, similar to the interactive map in the application process. Next slide. Finally, we'd like to share that in our first 4 weeks since the launch on January 16th, we have received 23 applications for personal dedications and 1 application for community dedications. These applications are currently being processed for this spring's planting. Under the former commemorative tree program, approximately 100 trees were planted each year, and we're pleased with the uptake so far in a very short period of time. We expect to receive more applications in the spring months when people typically turn their attention to trees. Next slide. C'est avec plaisir que nous avons présenté cet aperçu du programme d'arbres hommage actualisé. We're excited to bring you this overview of the refreshed tree dedication program, and we are confident that the enhancements and improvements will contribute to the success of the program. On behalf of Allison and myself, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and good to see that uptake beginning already. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just have a couple questions. So, and certainly I know how meaningful the program can be. My family is doing a tree dedication for my aunt that passed away last year. That's in Welland, but certainly the ease in which people can do this, especially when they're grieving or it's commemorative in this way, I think will make a big difference in people's experience of the program. So one is just that some parks are generally a lot more popular than other parks. And in our office, we've had to sometimes try and redirect people to dedicate a tree in parks that were not their top choice. Can you comment on the locations that you've selected and whether or not there are parks that are full or at capacity, or how you're going to manage some of that demand?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we have chosen to begin with at least 1 park in every ward. And as I said, we'll be expanding to other parks. The criteria that we used for this first round, we had a very limited number of time to do to all the site visits for 300 locations. So we chose parks where we knew that there was a need for trees in every ward. We'll be expanding to other parks. There are some parks in the city that are very, very full, and they were full with our previous commemorative tree program as well. I believe the commemorative bench program also has some locations that are also full for benches. So we'll work with clients to determine the closest park that we can to where they would like their tree.
And could you just offer like a bit of a rationale or the language around how a park becomes full for trees? Because I think for residents, sometimes that feels like a little hard to understand. Shouldn't we have as many trees as possible?
Yes, certainly there are some parks. There's a lot of activities that happen in parks. So if there are, events, cross-country skiing, there are also a lot of existing trees in the park. We need to leave some open spaces for active and passive recreation. So all of our locations are circulated internally and for comment so that we're not interfering with other activities or events happening in those parks.
Okay, perfect. Because that was my last question was, are you working with parks planning to anticipate future use? For example, in Centre Point Park, the disc golf that we have there now is now the fifth most popular disc golf course in Canada, and it's only been open since August. So people are coming from around the world to come to Centre Point Park, and of course, they're already wanting to expand. So are we going to be leaving space for future park planning when we're identifying locations for trees?
Through you, Chair. Yes, exactly. So all of our locations are circulated internally to Parks Planning. They're circulated to our events staff. We also, there's a lot of other departments that we're circulating to, and we work with those to either shift locations of trees where we'd like them planted in the park, or sometimes it's just not feasible to plant those trees. So the locations that we have now, the benefit of the new program is that all of those locations that have been chosen have already been circulated and approved, so they're ready to go for planting.
Beauty. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Vice Chair Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for that presentation. It was great to see how easy to use some of the tools are with the map and the ability to go online and locate where you can put the tree. I have a very predictable question, which I know that you know that I'm going to ask. Just in the presentation alone, when we saw the tree species on there was a little leaf linden, there was a ginkgo on there. Are you going to be reviewing, as part of the work that you're doing presently on the tree strategy, where you're doing a species review, will these be taken into account to look at more native trees for the program?
Through you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the question. So we do have our tree species review project underway right now. Our partners in the Strategic Initiative Department are leading that. Once we have our list of species that will be recommending for parks, we'll look at the species that we already have assigned in the tree dedication program, and we'll make any alterations that we can. We do aim to have native species available for each one of our locations, but we'll take that under consideration when we complete our tree species review project.
Thank you very much. And is there, when you're aiming to get the trees in the ground this year, and you've already got 24 trees to plant within 4 weeks period, is there a maximum that you anticipate that can be done per season through this program?
So under the previous commemorative tree program, we were doing about 50 to 55 trees per season. So for this spring, we had a little bit of a later start. Normally our cutoffs we would cut off in, say, the end of July for our spring season. So in a month, we've had 23, 24 applications, which is great. So we anticipate that with this program, with the expanded eligibility, that we'll probably be closer to 150 trees a year. That's our goal. So we'll be doing some promotion in the spring to bump up those numbers for the fall. But we're very pleased with the uptake so far.
Okay. Thank you very much, and great work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. And thank you very much for this, very interesting. The time that has been saved due to the ease that people have to ask for a tree. I always find it interesting that staff will say there's no more added staff, but what about, has this saved any staff positions that we would no longer need, or those staff, because if there's a great time saving, are those staff redirected to another job? What is the impact of that?
Through you, Chair. So we have landscape architects that administer all of our tree planting programs. So the streamlining of this program has allowed those staff to focus their attention on other planting programs that have a greater impact on increasing the number of trees planted per year.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Further, Councillor Curry?
I just had a problem with my button. The other question I had is, you know how the plaque can be in French and English. Is it possible for it to be in other languages and people may not want French but may want Arabic?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we have done third language translations for plaques in the past.
All right. And the last question I have is just, is there possible for any fruit tree planting if someone wanted to plant an apple tree?
Thank you, Councillor. So we will be doing through our tree species review project, we'll be looking at all the species that would be appropriate for plantings in parks and along streets. And if fruit trees are on those lists. Currently, we don't plant fruit trees in parks, but we'll take that into consideration through our tree species review project.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions, Councillor Curry, and for staff response. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this program. We get a lot of calls about it. I think that Andrew Hayden Park is the one that's filled up, but Britannia probably could use more always because it's so vulnerable to wind. My question is, it's updated on the website, but are you doing any communications on it so we can put in our newsletters?
Thank you for the question. Part of the communication plan was a memo to councillors early in January, where we did provide some media tidbits, if you will. And I think some of the councillors took us up on that, which was great. And we will be providing another reminder of those short promotional
social media
messaging in the spring and later when we have room for the planting in the fall. If we are full in the spring, then we will solicit your help in publishing some more promotions.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh, and thanks to staff for your great work on this. It's exciting to see the evolution of these programs, so appreciate that. We are going to move on to the next item, which is the Residential Protective Plumbing and Compassionate Grant Program Review and Proposed Bylaw and Program Update. So we will have a staff presentation. There is one registered speaker, and I believe there's a technical amendment too that'll come prior to that speaker. All right. Over to both of you. Thanks for being here, Marilyn and Brian.
Merci, je m'appelle Marilyn Journeau. Je suis la directrice des services linéaires d'eau et la clientèle. Nos équipes d'employés hautement qualifiés, planifiant, gérant et offrent des programmes et des services qui touchent directement les entreprises et les résidents. Brian Simpson, gestionnaire de services à la clientèle de services d'eau, vous présentera les modifications proposées pour ces deux programmes. Brian?
Thank you, Marilyn, and good morning. Today, I'll be speaking to the Residential Protective Plumbing Program and the Compassionate Grant Program. While I am the representative making today's presentation, I would like to recognize that the proposal presented today is a reflection of the hardworking and collective efforts of the entire project team. Next slide, please. The Residential Protective Plumbing Program, referred to as the RPP, provides financial assistance to qualified City of Ottawa property owners for the installation of protective plumbing devices, such as sump pumps and storm and sanitary backwater valves, to prevent water and sewage from flooding homes because of increased level and surcharging in the city's sewer system. The program was first launched in 1982, and since that time, there have been quite a few program updates and changes. But since 2016, we've had roughly 500 applications for funding, with just over 200 having been approved, worth a total of about $400,000 in grants that have been dispersed. And while the program is functioning in its current form, we thought we could do more and help more with the program in hopes of encouraging more residents to ensure their property is protected. Next slide, please. We received feedback from members of council, residents, and community groups from June to September of last year while consulting interdepartmentally with the public through Engage Ottawa and participating in a cafe's information session to gain a clearer understanding of the program changes needed to ensure residents are better protected against the risks of sewage backups and basement flooding. We heard from both residents and councillors that some residents were contacting their councillor about the lengthy and costly process to obtain minimal compensation through the RPP. We heard the application process has too many forms and multiple steps that was difficult to navigate. The requirement for closed-circuit TV inspection made the process more lengthy and expensive, and many people were simply unaware of the program itself. Next slide, please. Based on this feedback, internal review, municipal scans, and more, we developed a list of proposed changes to the program that we are asking committee and council to approve, which include consolidating the application forms from a two-part application consisting of about 10 pages down to a shorter and more simplified application of about 3 pages in length, removing the requirement for a closed-circuit television inspection, removal of the external consultant's review of the proposed scope of work, eliminating the need for property taxes to be paid in full to be eligible, while also introducing new rebate opportunities, namely primary and secondary sump pumps with battery backups, with or without the construction of a new sump pump pit where required, while also providing a full year of rebate eligibility from the time the building permit is issued. These changes will not only make the application process much easier for residents, but they will also allow us to increase the rebate amounts that are available. Next slide, please. The proposed rebates, as are shown, represent an increase in what had previously been available. By implementing these changes, we believe that program uptake will increase, resulting in improved protection for those residents. Funds are currently available within the existing budget authority, and in the event there is a significant uptake in the program, future budget requirements will be brought forward through the annual budget process. Next slide, please. Turning to the Compassionate Grant Program, it provides funding of $1,000 to qualified residential property owners and tenants who have been affected by recurring basement flooding due to sewer surcharging. Currently, to qualify, a property owner must provide proof of 3 or more sewer backups during a 15-year period. Similar to the RPP, the participation rate could be better and could help more residents, and therefore we are proposing to update this program as well. Next slide, please. The proposed changes to the program to better support residents include simplifying the application process, reduce documentation requirements, reducing the criteria to only one sewer surcharge event in a 5-year period, reported within 1 month of the surcharge event, with at least $1,000 in damage, rather than the 3 events over a 15-year current period. Also eliminating the need for property taxes to be paid in full, and prior to the property owner receiving any subsequent compassionate grants, they must undertake approved mitigation measures to prevent future flooding, such as participating in the RPP or having their backwater valve maintained. Next slide, please. As a part of our next slide, we will work with our colleagues in public information and media relations and other departments to develop an ongoing education and communications plan to help inform residents. There will be updates to ottawa.ca, a public service announcement with social media outreach, and an information package for council, which will be made available around our April 1st launch date. The new program will roll out on April 1st to ensure we have the necessary website updates and revised forms ready to go. We will continue to monitor program uptake and feedback from residents and program participants to ensure these changes are achieving the goals of helping residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that and the work to update this. We're going to do a technical amendment from the Vice Chair before we move to our one delegation. Councillor Carr.
Whereas the staff report includes proposed changes to the Residential Protective Plumbing Program and the associated bylaw, substantially in the form attached as document 1, of which a minor correction is required. Therefore, be it resolved that the Environment and Climate Change Committee approve a technical amendment to Document 1 to replace reference to Schedule B with Schedule A in sections 4.1D and 5.
Okay, so we'll come back to that technical amendment at the end with the recommendations, and I'll invite our speaker up, Angela Keller-Herzog.
Hi, everybody, and apologies for getting my presentation in late due to Family Day weekend. So I'm here to speak to the Residential Protective Plumbing Program update. And first of all, I want to say that this is good news, and we're very, very happy that all the effort has gone into the update, the public consultation, and we think this is one piece of the puzzle. So as usual, we also have some suggestions for how things could be even better. Next slide, please. I think all of you know cafes. We're an environmental and climate leader network here for Ottawa. Next slide, please. So in terms of the presentation, I'm just briefly going to say a couple words on context and then hit on some main issues. Next slide, please. So we face increasing flooding risk. All cities across Canada do due to climate change, urbanization, and aging infrastructure. I think you're aware of this, but it really is, these trains are bearing down on us. Floods are now more costly than fires. But for fire, we have a really well-developed emergency response system, and we have fire code. And for floods, we don't. We don't have like the flood code, right? So there's a lot more that can be done. But the Intact Centre on Climate Adaptation has been doing really super excellent quality in depth. So the City of Ottawa, if we want it, there is ready guidance available. No need to reinvent the wheel. And I guess the last point, again, not new, but it requires integrated work across departments and programs to really get to better flood prevention. It's not just one program that can make all the difference. Next slide, please. I should probably go faster. So historically, the RPP program, and where's the timer that I can see it? Okay, I'll just go faster. Historically, this is an underutilized program, and we heard a lot from residents is that nobody knows about it. The staff report doesn't actually have performance metrics for the program. We imagine that there's activity level tracking in terms of how many applications were funded, et cetera. But in terms of at the level of city outcomes, the results that we're looking for in terms of flood prevention, we don't think that that work has been formalized at all. Next slide, please. So cafes, very much engaged on this because it is part of climate resiliency, and with the support of quite a few councillors and working in collaboration with staff, we did a public information and consultation session in October, and I have forwarded the final report from that to all the councillors on the committee. Next slide, please. Some of the highlights from that, the streamlining of process is very much welcomed. The need for increasing communication and promotion and like how the program is explained and presented to residents really needs an update, and I think that's underway. The increases in the rebate, residents said, was not sufficient to cover costs, and there's the residents, as often is the case, are asking for clearer guidance on which contractors are the good ones. And I know this is problematic because of liability, but I think the Rain Ready program provides an excellent model of how one can get around that in terms of doing a skills training program that qualified contractors are then identified. Next slide, please.
So in terms of the resident questions, there's issues around who is eligible, and I think the program will make that fairly clear. But in terms of which costs are eligible, that is made much less clear, including in the staff report. So I think some work is needed there, and particularly whether plumbers' diagnostic visits are eligible. So if you're a homeowner in a flood-prone area and you want a plumber to tell you, like, well, what's going on? What can I do? Is that preventative visit eligible? And also, is there a pre-approval stage? So a homeowner that optionally wants to know, if I make these improvements, can I get a reimbursement? Would that question be answered? Or under the new streamlined program, it's just, no, we can't tell you that. Maybe, probably, but no commitment. And that's a real lack of clarity there. Next slide, please. In terms of cafes, questions on the bylaw, thank you for the schedule update. We also think there's a lack of clarity in terms of still making reference to a qualified inspector visit and CCTV in the bylaw. And we also are very surprised that work for the purpose of maintaining, repairing, or replacing the existing protective plumbing devices. This is specifically excluded. So if the objective of the program is to improve flood prevention, why would you want to exclude maintenance and repair work? Next slide, please.
So I'll have to ask you to just wrap up quickly.
Yeah, so this is the last slide. So in terms of the bigger picture, we think that there is a very big low-hanging fruit for targeted work in known residential flood-prone areas. And this program, again, is a very small part of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm not seeing questions, but I do have one. I'm just wondering more about what you're looking for on the technical revisions that Cafes recommends, what specifically you're looking for, if this is something that can be done in the future with the program, and just sort of that bigger picture flooding. Obviously, we've had major floods in a lot of our areas, and if you can tie that into this program specifically, this is not going to be the solution to all of that, but it's one tool in the toolbox, certainly. So just your thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, so we are saying that in section 10D, and this is in the draft bylaw itself, which I imagine is document 1 to the staff report, and I imagine nobody has actually read that, because who really wants to read bylaws, right? So the section D says that this rebate shall not be approved. So this is an exclusion, right? So it excludes work that is for the purpose of maintaining, repairing, or replacing existing protective plumbing devices. So again, like if somebody has problems, but they have some kind of old protective plumbing gear, whether it's a sump pump or whatever, that basically they couldn't update, make functional, knowing there's a problem. So this seems very, very counterintuitive. Second of all, in section 7, paragraph D, there is still the reference to the qualified contractor and the CCTV inspection or site investigation. I have discussed this with the program, and they think that this is optional, but not being a lawyer, I think this maybe should be reviewed because the language looks pretty assertive. And I think it's making the resident like basically sign to some fine print. And if it ever went to litigation and it turned out that, well, like, no, we haven't done a site investigation, we just had a plumber show up and do some work, that could be like a trap for the resident. So those are the two very specific things that we think should be looked at. In terms of the bigger picture, the fact that in all of the wards there are specific, even like not even whole neighborhoods, but parts of neighborhoods that are flood prone. And I think that we know where they are. So in that targeted area where the risk is known to be high, why wouldn't there be the ability to have like a site inspection by a plumber as a preventative measure? And why shouldn't that be covered under like this program so that a homeowner can do a diagnostic visit? And if a flood does hit, I think the city wants the information, right? So that we can improve. So maybe there should also be another eligibility for inspection and diagnostics after a flood happened.
Okay, thank you very much for those technical amendments. I will ask staff just to briefly comment, and on the CCTV one, we had identified that previously as well, and want to make sure we're on the same page with staff as optional. So appreciate your dedication to this and the work you've done on the file. Any other questions for Ms. Calarizzo? Seeing yes, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yeah, thank you as always for your delegation. And yes, Bayward is very much in the flood area. So this is top of mind. 2019 was the last flood, and it was significant with water splashing right over the edge of a wall. But I will ask staff the questions you raised. I'm just wondering if there's any good examples out there of other cities that have gone a step further, like some of your suggestions.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Kavanaugh. So I am a bit of an information hoarder, and I have a lot of curiosity about a lot of things. So when this meeting came up, I actually, in my paper stash of information, I found these reports by the Intact Center. The most recent is from 2024, and I snagged them at an adaptation exhibition conference at the Shaw Center last year. And one of the studies actually gives very comparative information across municipalities. Ottawa gets a B-, not the top score. And in terms of the methodology is very clear, and then it has like 10 dimensions where the city can figure out like where can we do better, where are we doing better than other cities. So I think that the climate resiliency unit is very much aware of the Intact Center, and we've talked about helping to promote that information. But in terms of an integrated approach across departments, I think maybe that's where maybe these resources could be very effectively deployed.
Thank you. I've already seen an evolution of how to react to flooding for between 2017 and 2019. We got better, and unfortunately, that was like a dress rehearsal. Unfortunately, but it's important that we know how to get for the next one. And right now, we do freshet season, and we get people aware when the potentials are, which is in the spring. So that'll be coming up, but appreciate the ideas, and I'll certainly be asking staff questions about it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you, Angela. And so now we're on to the item, questions and comments from councillors. Feel free to raise your hand as needed. All right, Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for this program. I'm very excited by this. I appreciate this program. A few questions from your presentation, and then just some other questions I have. So I think I heard you mention that since 2016, there have been something in the range of 500 applications to the programs, and something in the range, and I got the numbers wrong, of about 250 of those applications being successful with, I believe I heard a budget output in the range of 400,000. So assuming that your goal is broaden participation in this program, do you anticipate seeing this broadening of the program being a significant new budget pressure?
Thank you, Chair. We believe we've got sufficient budgets right now, even with alleviating some of the restrictions on there. So based on the current funding we have available for us for 2025, for example, at the highest funding rate we have, we could issue about 190 grants, which is a significant increase over years previous, particularly when we keep in mind that for those 190 applications to come through, they do have some work to do throughout the course of 2025. So we do feel as though for 2025 and 2026, we're well positioned. If there is a significant increase, over the first few months, then we'll bring that back through the budget process later this summer. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I noticed in the presentation for the Compassionate Grant Program, I saw a line that said that homeowners who receive funding through the program will need to ensure that they put certain mitigations in place if ever they were to be eligible for another grant. So I think that's a good idea, just ensure in case of us ensuring that homeowners are responsible. But I wanted to ask what measures would need to be in place and how would we monitor to ensure that kind of compliance?
Thank you. So for one example, someone that participates in the Compassionate Grant, if they then participate in the Residential Protective Plumbing Program, that's another one that we would then have information on. And as well, even small things such as ensuring their backwater valves are maintained, which should be done on an annual basis, which we know that many homeowners do not do. But even just evidence of that, whether it be a receipt from a plumber saying, yeah, we had our backwater valve maintained, then that will then open up that eligibility criteria after that first 5 years.
And so speaking of that criteria, will we be publishing what those eligibility criteria for secondary applications of funding would be?
We're going to come up with a list. Yeah. Now, we don't want to make it fully inclusive because, with the changing environment, with the greater focus on climate change and flooding around the world, we do know that the list is going to continue to grow. But within our operating procedures that we'll be rolling out internally over the next few weeks, we're going to try to document those. But again, I just want to be clear that if something comes in that may not be on our list, we still will consider it. We're going to work with our staff and colleagues in asset management, climate resiliency, to figure out, does this make sense? Is this another step that they're taking? And if so, we'll add it onto the list of approved measures. Thank you.
Thank you. So like I said, I'm very supportive of this program. I know that it's a citywide program, but like several of my colleagues, I have areas in Ward 9 that are very, very prone to flooding. Not flooding. So I just want to zero in on a ward-specific question. So I'm happy that I have areas in my ward like Fisher Glen or Carlton Heights that are going to benefit from an engineering study that the city will do to try to determine what are those area vulnerabilities. In a recent email that I got from staff about this issue, where staff talked about the challenge of implementing long-term solutions, so there was a comment from staff that read, such solutions will take many years, therefore private property solutions will be required by homeowners to protect their property. This will include the installation of backwater valves on their storm and sanitary sewer laterals. So I also worry about homeowners in these areas who are going to find themselves less and less covered by a home insurance industry that is trying to back away from these kinds of flooding coverages. And so when it comes to the geographic scope of the program and the areas that it serves, will there be any attempt to ensure that participation in the program is tied as closely as possible to areas that are most vulnerable to the kinds of flooding issues that these supports are meant to mitigate?
Thank you. The program is designed to really reach out across the entire city. But when flooding events occur, as one of the big changes we did last year as well, in preparation for large rainstorm events, was putting out some PSAs and some information to the residents. And we see this as being part and parcel. So later this year, when we see large weather events coming down and you see some PSAs coming out from our colleagues in public information media relations, we are going to tie some messaging around this as well to say, hey, don't forget, the Residential Protective Plumbing Program is an option. We are going to try to focus attention. But again, it is difficult, particularly when we look across over the last few years where we do know there's areas that are more flood prone. But depending on the weather patterns, everybody's vulnerable and susceptible to it. And that's why we really want to try to ensure that this is open for everyone across the city. But yes, when it comes time to specific events, we are going to try to target some neighborhoods, whether it be handing out pamphlets individually with some of my staff, or just ensuring that messages go out from PSAs or even from the councils yourself.
Just to follow up on that, because I know that to a certain degree, everyone is prone to it, but just like we have warrants and criteria to hand out any number of measures when demand outstrips supply, and anticipating a future where demand on your program may outstrip supply, do you envision any kind of program or we will put in place some kind of scoring mechanism to determine that this person requesting this program may need it more than somebody in another neighborhood?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do envision that. And we do track all of those calls that come in. So we do have a database whenever we're submitting in an application, whether it's approved or not, we do track all of that. And this is part of the bigger picture. I mean, Angela had mentioned many tools in the toolboxes. And really one of the items we're hoping to build out of both the RPP and the Compassionate Grant is really that additional collection of information. Because what we do know right now, what happens is many houses will have sewer backups or storm backups during significant weather events, and we don't always receive all the information. There is a gap in the data that we have. So we are hopeful that by, alleviating some of the strings on both of these programs, it's A, going to help the residents, B, it's going to give us better information to then figure out what can we do. And what I will say on both of these programs, while we are looking at making some changes today and, over the next couple of weeks, I do not see this as being the end of it. I do see this as an iterative process where we do want to track and monitor both the impacts to residents, what we're hearing from them insofar as the successes. We're going to continue to work with Angela and some of the outside stakeholders, like what else can we do? But again, the changes we're making today and we're proposing today are quite significant. And we just want to ensure we're taking that measured approach. We're not doing too much too soon. We do think these changes are quite significant. We do think they're going to drive participation, and hopefully additional changes will come in the future, again, to maximize the granting opportunities that we have.
Great. I have one last question, and this one has to do with ensuring that residents who can benefit from this program don't meet unnecessary or unforeseen obstacles. So I had a resident in my ward that was working with a private plumber to get a backwater valve installed, and she was seeking the rebate from this program. So this family needed to install an outdoor backwater valve, and specifically they were looking to install a valve for their outdoor sanitary line. However, at the time, the city's rebate was only applicable to outdoor stormwater. The comment I got from the family's plumber said the city's rebate program didn't like the fact that we were installing an outdoor valve because it wasn't within their parameters. I don't have any clients that have ever received a rebate when putting backwater valves outside. And so I know that comment from that plumber came before any of your revisions. So I just want to ask whether or not these kinds of issues are being addressed so that we can get greater participation. And more specifically, will the program be applicable to outdoor valves as well as indoor? And will those apply to sanitary lines as well as stormwater?
Thank you, Chair. The new program updates will include the outdoor storm backwater valves. I do need to double check on the outdoor sanitary backwater valves, simply because I do believe those require maintenance, which is why we generally prefer those to be inside the building. But again, that's the type of feedback and discussion that we want to try to have with residents and applicants moving forward to try to figure out how can we find that happy medium to ensure that we are giving residents the support that they need. Because again, that's our goal. Our goal is to ensure residents are best protected. And if there's small tweaks and changes we need to do the program along the way, we're happy to review them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those good questions. Vice Chair Carr.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. This is the update to this program is something that's very important to me. I will always remember August 10th, 2023, and the floods that happened when we reached up to a peak of, I think, 107 millimeters in the city of rain in a very short period of time. Staff from the very beginning of that day have been very helpful, helping to resolve issues within my neighborhood and within the city overall in terms of developing better reporting mechanisms on flooding, committing to improving communication and programs such as these, and also participated in a session that Cafes hosted that was held in my community that we had fantastic uptake on. One of the common themes from the very beginning was in dealing with residents was on the insufficiency of these programs, the Compassionate Grant and the Residential Protected Plumbing Program. So I just have a couple questions that I just kind of to further to what Councillor Devine was asking. Brian, when you were doing your presentation, you talked about having an annual opportunity, depending as part of the budget, to look at uptake and adjust the budget as necessary. So that would be in terms of what you were speaking about, I guess, is in terms of ensuring that there would be enough budget to cover the uptake. But will there also be an opportunity to evaluate the amount of grants? Because the size of the grants at that time as well? Or when will the next program review be done? Because it is something that I have a concern about when we do have people that have had multiple floods, have no insurance left because this hasn't been addressed. So, you know, I appreciate the chance to look at budget to see, okay, do we need to increase this because we have so much uptake? But we also need that opportunity to evaluate how the amount of grants are.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, we do plan on having a continual evaluation process to stay on top of what are the costs being faced by residents to ensure that the grants are meaningful. What I can say with the increased grants that we're proposing today, it is about a 42% increase over what it was in the past. So I do think that is a good step forward. Is it the full way there? We're not entirely certain yet, but all the evidence that we've reviewed and the work we've done, we feel like we're in a really good spot right now. But yes, we do want to continue to monitor, particularly with the unknown economic environment where we're in right now, where costs could potentially increase over the next year to year and a half. And we do want to pay close attention to that to understand, you know, what is that impact on residents? Because again, we want to try to ensure that the grants are reasonable enough that, you know, we're not asking for an absorbent amount of money from council, but we do also want to ensure that it's enough of a grant to encourage residents to participate.
Thank you very much. And just continuing on a point that was made by the delegation and by my colleague, Councillor Devine, with respect to geographical targeting, and this may have been asked and I may just have missed it, is there an opportunity to geographically track these in the same online in the same way that we can look at, for example, Rain Ready? Can we look at the uptake? Are we able to look and see the grants that we've received? Do they match the areas of flooding? Do you know what I mean? Like a geographical representation and overlay.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, we do have that ability. Unfortunately, when we chatted about the participation rate earlier, it has been a little bit depressed over the last few years. Councillor Devine had mentioned, you know, about 500 applications since 2016, only around 200 actually having been approved at the end of the day. A lot of that was because of the roadblocks we're trying to alleviate today. So insofar as lengthy application, lengthy time to process. So we're hoping that by eliminating that, we can increase their participation. So it does give us a better sense of, you know, who and which communities are using them so we can then better target them.
And after the August 10th, 2023 floods, did you see an uptake in applications to the existing programs?
Thank you, Chair. With the Compassionate Grant, we didn't see any uptake at all with that. With the Residential Protective Plumbing Program, I think we had additional call-outs for information, but we didn't see a significant increase in the applications. And again, this is where we're hoping that by, you know, reducing some of the constraints, such as the application length and some of those details, that, you know, we'll be able to get that number up a lot higher.
Okay, and is there any opportunity with respect to outreach? The Rain Ready program goes out. I've seen them out at fairs. They've come out to markets, this sort of stuff. Is there any opportunity to combine those efforts to promote this program as well, particularly in neighborhoods that have a track record of excessive flooding?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that is something we've been discussing as well with our communications staff on how we can do some targeted outreach. But again, with one of the things that you'll see throughout this year is when we are having, you know, significant rainfall events or storm weather events, we are going to be putting out additional messages on PSAs. And when we have staff go out in the field, we're going to be arming them with some pamphlets as well to give out to residents to, again, ensure that people are simply aware of the program as an option to use for their own protection.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, and appreciate these programs. They're sort of aimed at the situation where the flooding is happening, but there's still a lot to be done in prevention. So, and I appreciate the Rain Ready program, and we've already talked about, like, for the ditch programs. I really appreciate the work that's being done on the ditch programs, specifically one that's going to be coming to Lakeview community. But there's two kinds of the flooding. There's the groundwater flooding of excessive rainfall, and there's a river that is overflowing. And that's the case that we have in flood zones in Belltown and in Britannia. There's still work to be done on prevention. One of the frustrations I've just recently run into is the fact that the NCC owns part of the land near the water, and they're not interested in participating in helping out the community. They see that as a city problem, despite the fact that they own the what could be the barrier for flooding. So I've recently had a meeting with city staff at the waterfront on a very cold day to look at that. So these are issues that we have to look at as well to prevent flooding. But it's pretty significant. 2019, just elected, and getting sandbags out there and everything else. Appreciate the work that has done, and that we're more prepared than we've ever been, and that we have the freshet season and we work with our VCA. That's all great. But I just want to know more about the preventative measures in terms of what we're doing specifically for our river flood.
Thank you, Chair. Now, for the RPP, it's not going to have a huge impact on riverine flooding. But what I can say, and it was alluded to earlier, where, the RPP and Compassionate grant their tools of the broader toolbox. And that's where we work closely with our asset management branch and strategic initiatives with climate resiliency to really then build out, like, what does that full toolbox look like? And I will admit there is more work to be done around flooding, not just riverine, but on all types of flooding. And that is something that staff across the various departments are eager to work towards and hopefully find some resolutions in the future. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the work, and I wonder if we can get specific communications for an area like Belltown and Britannia to be ready. This is the time of year for it. I've got an open house coming up. Maybe I can get some staff to come out for that, because so we can be ready for the spring. Because of the significant snowfall, I think people are going to be, the radar is going to be up, because that melt will be big. And so it means the river is going to be higher. So I think we have to be extra ready this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I will ensure that I speak with staff to ensure that we do have some communications prepared to go out ahead of the riverine flooding. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Chair, sorry if I can step in, because from a public works perspective, we do actively monitor basically the freshet season. So basically this is a best practice that we learned after the 2017-2019 event. So every year we basically stand up kind of our monitoring period. And part of that is also to try to share information with residents around what they can do to prepare. So I can say that there's definitely a greater level of awareness across the organization around how we prepare for the freshet season.
Yes, I appreciate that. And we have to work on getting the NCC involved, because they own part of the land that could help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Obviously, we're going to be facing a lot more floods in the future here in Ottawa, and we've already seen some of that trend happen. So this is a very important program. I understand there is a technical amendment to speak to what the delegation had brought up about ensuring that the CTT inspection is very clearly optional and not required. So I'll just get, if it's okay with staff, or if you want to comment on it, I'll get staff to certainly do a technical, to Vice Chair Carr to read in the technical amendment now, and then Councillor King, I'll go to you after that's read in. There's this one piece to amend the initial, just the third portion there. The other portion's been read in, so this would be a friendly amendment to your original amendment.
Be it further resolved that document 1 be further amended to delete in 7.1D the requirement for a qualified contractor to obtain a CCTV inspection or site investigation.
Thank you. I think that'll clarify the point that was raised, and I think that was staff intent in any event. So thank you for that, Councillor King.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I'd like to thank staff for the informative presentation. Just wanted to build on Vice Chair Carr's observations concerning the overlay of geographic data. I'm wondering what specific metrics will be used to measure the success of these program changes, particularly in terms of flood prevention outcomes.
Thank you, Chair. Our first metric we want to really look at is just the participation. Because again, what we've seen in years previous is many folks will send an initial application, and once they kind of see the legwork that is followed, that's generally where people begin to fall off. So when we look at that delta from 500 applications to about 200 being approved, the bulk of that is actually people looking at the application process and saying, that's a bit lengthy. Is it actually worth my time and effort? So the very first metric we really want to look at is just that participation. We want more people involved with the program. We want more people ensuring that their basements and houses are protected from sewer surcharging and backups. So that's going to be our very first metric. Once we can get to a space where, we're having more and more participation, we do already have the geographical data. Right now, it's really sporadic. But again, when we layer on top of these changes with some of the focused messaging that we want to do, via the weather events that are coming down when we do some door knocking, then we're hoping to see that uptake. But again, what we do know is these weather forecasts can hit everybody. Everybody is susceptible at some point in time. So what we'd really like to see is people from across the city, even ahead of being faced with any surcharging and negative effects, to really come forward at that time as well, right? The protections are great when they're there, but if you wait for a negative event to come and flood your basement before participating, the damage is already done. And as we know, basement flooding can be costly. So we're really hoping that everyone across the city can reach out and really participate, because it is in everyone's benefit. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I know that you indicated the need for greater public awareness, and we were hearing about different options, especially around PSAs, informing through newsletters, etc. But I'm just wondering, how will the enhanced education and communications plan specifically target neighborhoods with aging infrastructure? And this is something that I've seen in my ward, where infrastructure from the 50s is not configured the way that it would be configured now if the infrastructure was built out. And there's a need for these types of programs in those types of neighborhoods that are affected by older infrastructure. You were talking about the potential for door knocking. I know that often engineering staff and infrastructure staff comes out and visits residents to do assessments about the concerns that they have when we have flash flooding in specific neighborhoods. So I'm just wondering, specifically around aging infrastructure, what does education and communication look like for residents?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We work really closely with asset management on things of this nature. And as you mentioned, as infrastructure staff, I'd previously gone out to do some investigations. What we're really focusing on and what we really transitioned to a bit last year as well is when we have major events with major flooding, we're actually having some of the water distribution and some of my customer service staff also going out to help triage residents and ensure that they have the information. One of the items we're also going to be doing is we'll be having an online portal where residents can, instead of calling 311 every time, they'll be able to go online and log their flood reports there. Again, to help us get that information. Insofar as targeting approach, we haven't got into the weeds yet around, are there specific neighborhoods that we need to do some specific outreach on? But that is something that we'll take away, chat with our communications staff, and maybe we'll reach out to a few of the councils as well that we know are in those flood-prone zones to determine if there's a specific type of outreach that might be beneficial for your areas, but we're happy to take that away. Again, our goal is to really get the program out there and have more people aware of it and participating with it. So any avenues we can take to do that, we're happy to explore.
I appreciate that, because I think it would be very powerful for us to relay the importance and the potential of the grant programs that are available when we're on site with residents making these assessments. So, I'm just thinking back to a couple months ago when, I was in the middle of an intersection with residents, with staff, and I think it would have been very powerful as well to relay to all the residents on that street that these programs are available. So I think that we have to be a little bit more nuanced in terms of the way that we get the education out to residents to ensure that they take advantage of these programs. Especially concerning prevention. I know that cafes had just asked a series of questions. I'm just wondering if you could specifically answer why isn't more preventative maintenance and repair work? Why is it excluded from the report as it's before us today?
Thank you, Chair. So insofar as the maintenance, maintenance on the backwater valves is something that should be done annually. We've got thousands and thousands across the city. And part of the reason why we didn't want to really leave maintenance as one of the funding options was, one, we want more people to ensure that they have the backwater valves in the first place. So that's really our focus. We know not all residential properties do. That's the main focus. Our concern was, if this is going to be used for maintenance, then the bulk of the budget will end up just being maintenance for regular homeowners, which again is something people should be doing on a regular basis themselves. So the idea is to get more people to have the backwater valves, not simply use the money towards maintaining what's already in the system. Thank you.
I appreciate that answer. I think, though, we are seeing interest in being more preventative. I think that this is a continuing conversation that we should pursue, obviously, with staff. But I do think that this report is definitely a step in the right direction. I think we need to ensure that we're not just responding to flooding, but ultimately preventing future incidents. But I believe that this is a step in the right direction, and I'll be supporting the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Okay, so, and thank you to staff for the work in getting us here. There's a lot of improvement here. On the Vice Chair's technical amendment, with that one addition, is that carried? Perfect. And are the recommendations carried? As amended. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to sewers bylaw was carried already. The landfill gas utilization agreement extension. We have no staff presentation, but we do have one registered speaker, and we've received no other additional correspondence. Mr. McKillop, you're a speaker on this item. Good morning, and you've got 5 minutes to address the committee, specifically on the item of landfill gas utilization.
So I went over your landfill gas reutilization that you've seemed to have done a long time ago. I brought some slides. Are my slides available?
Yeah, we'll have those up for you.
Slides.
You can go ahead. They're up there.
I'm not seeing them up there.
Yeah, they're shared in Zoom here, but I don't know why they're not up here.
I don't know why they're not up there either.
There we go. You can go ahead.
Okay, could you go to the next slide, please? So I went through this landfill business. If you look at 1C there, you'll see emergencies, mean a sudden state of danger or potential danger that places the public, facility staff, plant site, gas collection system, or plant site at risk of harm or damage. Later on, under P, it talks about gas, means all gases resulting from anaerobic decompensation. It then goes into hazardous substances. Next slide, please. Now, this would be a document written by OECD in 2015 regarding landfilling of waste containing nanomaterials and nano waste. If you go to 2C on that one slide, you'll see that according to, in 2015, the increase in concentration of nanomaterials in the environment may cause long-term chronic effects through different food chains. Next slide, please. This is the anaerobic bioprocessing plant that seems to be used in a lot of these lead landfills. The final slide of that brings up NRC capabilities in food. Next slide, please. These are still NRC capabilities in food, the key technologies for the future of food. Written in 2017, it brings up technologies for sustainability and waste reduction can make advanced materials, green, bio-based, and nano. It says it hooks it up to artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, for big data analytics. On the second page of that slide, number 8, it brings up anaerobic digestion and microbial production. The final pick on that slide shows Francois Collet at the IEC, who you're currently following standards for here at the Environment and Climate Change Committee, both IEC and ISO standards. Francois is an SCC Governing Council member, and these are standards regarding biodigital convergence and the Internet of Things. Next slide, please. As you can see, these are still ISO and IEC standards regarding both nanotechnologies. That's the first circle at the top. The second circle bring up bioprocessing, which would anaerobic digestion would be involved in. It then goes to show molecular farming, cellular agriculture, GMOs, etc. The final pick in that slide shows a man with graphene-based sensors for health monitoring. Next slide, please. This will have biosensors on one side, which I know also anaerobic digestion is involved in. You'll see wastewater-based epidemiology at the underneath that. On the following pic, you'll see the ambivalent role of graphene oxide in anaerobic digestion. Next slide. Actually, could you go to the next slide? And the following slide, sorry. One more slide. Okay, so on this slide, it says assessing the impact of nanomaterials on anaerobic microbial communities. Says here that little is known about the fate and effects of nanomaterials in nature. Yet it seems this city council is putting nanomaterials in everything. Next slide, please. These are some questions I asked Roke XI regarding various nanomaterials employed in anaerobic digestion. If people look at that, they bring up graphene, carbon nanotubes, nanocomposites. And they also bring up that it's involved with broader research. I asked Roke what that broader research was, and the AI seems to believe, as you can, next slide. Then the next, where I asked Roke the broader research, and then Roke XI seems to believe the broader research area involving the use of nanomaterials and anaerobic digestion can indeed be considered part of the broader concept of biodigital convergence. He gets into biodigital convergence, which refers to the intersection and merging of biological and digital technologies. The application of nanomaterials in biological processes like anaerobic digestion showcases how nanotechnology, a digital and material science field, integrates with biological systems to enhance natural processes. Now, if you're
I'll just ask you to wrap up your 5 minutes.
If you're to believe what both our National Research Council of Canada has to say, what Francois Collier has to say, what the OECD has to say, these nanomaterials that you're putting in the environment right now are very hazardous and it should be called an emergency according to your own reports. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm not seeing any questions on the board, so we'll move on to the report recommendations. Is the item carried? Okay, thank you very much for that. We are on to the Environment and Climate Change Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending 6th of February 2025. No staff presentation or no registered speakers. Is this item received? Okay, and there are no in-camera items. We're going to move now to the Solid Waste Services 2025 legislative look ahead. Thanks for staying with us through this morning. And I understand staff did want to do a brief presentation on this, looking at the schedule for the rest of 2025 on what is an important and busy file for everybody. So we'll let them get set up.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Shelley McDonald, the Director of Solid Waste Services. I'm pleased to be here with you today to share an overview of the solid waste project work and legislative deliverables in 2025. Many of these initiatives fall under the amazing teams in solid waste, led by Rachel Jones, Program Manager of Long-Term Planning, and Andrea Gay-Farley, Program Manager of Waste Collections, Programs, and Customer Service. And I'm pleased to have them here with me today. Oh, sorry, just need a moment. Okay, we will start today's presentation with a brief overview of what drives our work plan, provincial mandates, and of course, the newly approved Solid Waste Master Plan. We will then get into the details of this year's plan, including what legislative and project deliverables will be underway and reported out during 2025. Next slide, please. The Solid Waste Master Plan was approved last year as a 30-year plan that will guide Ottawa to reduce, collect, manage, dispose of, and extract resources from solid waste over the short, medium, and long term. A total of 50 actions were approved through the Solid Waste Master Plan, with more than half either underway or will be underway in 2025. Each action works towards achieving one of the 5 objectives. These 5 objectives reflect the council-approved waste hierarchy by which the Solid Waste Master Plan was built. Another key driver of deliverables for 2025 is provincial regulations and their impact on daily operations. We will continue to comply to regulations and adapt if and when an issue or new regulation arises. We are regularly engaged with the ministry and, as a matter of fact, had a successful annual inspection completed a couple of weeks ago. While safety and compliance remains a priority for landfill operations and management, we're also facing a large change in how our recycling services will be delivered. Today, we'll identify which sectors are being impacted by IPR and how we plan to update this committee on our services to ensure minimal disruption to residents throughout this transition. Next slide, please. Given the complex nature and intricacies between solid waste project work and legislative deliverables, and to clearly show how the deliverables this year either link to one another or support the waste plan, we have categorized each item into one of 4 themes: maximizing space and planning for the future of our landfill, exploring technologies for the future of waste management in Ottawa, responding to provincial mandates, and reporting on progress and celebrating achievements. The following 4 slides will break down each category and the associated items for each. As a reminder, some of these items will be seeking Council's approval, while others are merely to provide an update on the ongoing project work. Next slide, please. The legislative roadmap for 2025 includes reports that focus on maximizing the capacity of the Trail Waste Facility landfill, leveraging existing energy utilization agreements, and presenting long-term opportunities for waste management technologies and landfill gas optimization. The first report for 2025 is the landfill gas utilization agreement extension that was discussed and carried this morning. Later this year, Council will consider the landfill gas management optimization strategy to manage landfill gas and optimize landfill gas outputs as a resource and a potential revenue stream while reducing the city's greenhouse gas contributions. While diverting organics from landfill remains a priority, we know that decomposing organic waste from years of disposal has and continues to produce landfill gas, meaning after a landfill is closed, gas management is still required. Staff will be providing a webinar and a question and answer session to councillors to learn about potential landfill gas options next month, ahead of this report being tabled later this year. As approved in 2023, staff have initiated the environmental assessment for expanding Trail within its current footprint, and an open house will take place in March. While it could take 10 years for expansion approval and implementation, consultations will be completed along the way, and we are committed to providing updates as the project progresses. Maximizing space at the landfill is essential, and as approved through the waste plan, one way to do this is by banning industrial, commercial, and institutional waste at Trail. This ban will begin later this year, and staff are working on a communication strategy to ensure this impacted sector is aware of the ban and advised of the alternative disposal options available to them. Next slide, please. A critical component of the future of solid waste lies within the use of proven technologies. Staff are undertaking a feasibility study and business case for waste management technologies, including the exploration of waste-to-energy incineration and mixed waste processing. This feasibility study and business case will be presented to Committee and Council in Q2 2025. As directed by Council, this report will focus on technologies that are available, in operation, proven for managing and diverting municipal waste from landfills, that meet or exceed all current applicable environmental regulations and align with the city's solid waste master plan. A webinar on Explore Technologies will be provided to members of Council in March, followed by a question and answer session with our technical consultants. In addition to exploring technologies for residual waste management, the city will also consider how to process organic waste this year. Though the current processing contract does not expire for another 5 years, staff will be seeking direction for how organic household waste should be processed post-2030. A webinar on this topic will also be provided in March to ensure alignment between the different technologies is clear and to allow for councillors to digest the material and ask questions in a space ahead of Committee and Council's consideration. Next slide, please. The landscape of waste management within the City of Ottawa has changed in recent years as a result of the province's move to individual producer responsibility. It remains imperative that the city continue to examine its programs and services for residents and businesses in response to provincial changes and in alignment with the goals and the objective of the Solid Waste Master Plan. Council will learn updates and provide direction on 3 items pertaining to IPR this year, starting with household hazardous waste. While the responsibility of household hazardous waste falls under the purview of the province, Ottawa has and will continue to offer household hazardous waste disposal options for residents to ensure these hazardous materials do not end up in the back of a collection truck or a trail. Solid Waste Services will present the recommended household hazardous waste strategy to Council that considers the options and high-level cost estimates, where appropriate, for future implementation. Additionally, Solid Waste Services is undertaking a review of the Yellow Bag program for small businesses. The program review will provide a recommendation for Council consideration on the future of the Yellow Bag program for businesses, which is directly impacted by the regulation that guides the provincial Blue Box program. Under the provincial IPR program, Blue Box materials from small businesses are considered non-eligible, meaning the cost for their collection and processing falls outside of the responsibility of the producers. This review is necessary to determine if the city should continue to provide municipal waste collection to small businesses, given the provincial transition, to ensure cost recovery measures are in place. Lastly, Council will be provided with a report on plans for post-2026 when IPR is fully implemented. The plans for post-2026 Provincial Blue Box Program report will include how recyclable materials that do not fall within the scope of the Provincial Blue Box Program will be collected and diverted from trail. An overview of the communications plan for residents will also be provided to ensure minimal disruption to them while the change in service is taking place. Next slide, please. The last theme is related to reporting on progress and celebrating successes. Within that, we're bringing forward a report that will outline our strategy for providing parks waste collection diversion programs in our parks and public spaces across the city. This has been a huge success with the parks that have had the 3 stream bins installed already. With over 1,300 parks across the city of different sizes offering different amenities, we will be recommending a tailored approach for waste recycling and/or organics collection. It's important for us to remain in contact and provide insight on progress on the many approved action suites under the Solid Waste Master Plan. With new policies to support increasing diversion efforts underway, we will need to communicate on how things are progressing and opportunities for improvement and the overall success. We are gearing up to provide annual updates so that you have the latest information on how our policies and programs are aligning with the vision, goals, and objectives of the Solid Waste Master Plan. Updates on a wide range of projects, including the bulky waste strategy, waste diversion, and city facility strategy, to name a few, will be provided through this report. Later this fall, we'll report on the results of our annual audit for the in-house solid waste service and performance reporting. Next slide, please. And there you have it. the 2025 solid waste anticipated deliverables. 13 items driven by provincial mandates and aligning with the newly approved solid waste master plan. And while numerous items are identified above as deliverables, I want to reiterate that our daily operations and project work also continues, and it ensures Ottawa's residents are serviced safely and efficiently as our priority. Next slide, please. Over the coming weeks and months, solid waste will be a focal point in the community and at committee and council. As shared, we have a lot of amazing work underway and look forward to providing information as each of these items progress. Communications and engagement will be critical, and we look forward to the continued collaboration with residents, stakeholders, and members of Ottawa City Council. We will now welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the amount of information, all the work you're doing and the work to come in 2025. It's been a lot this term and a lot more to come this term. So very grateful for that work. I'm not seeing a lot of questions, but I'll just ask a quick one. Oh, Councillor Tierney, go for it.
I just want to actually give you thanks and to your team and Andre and the whole crew. With the transition, I think people thought the sky would fall. Clearly, that's not the case. I still think the media have a role in this. It's 3 items. I keep referring to this. People are having a hard time grasping the simple, but whatever. That being said, I just want to thank your crew and Andre specifically. And obviously, we've been chatting a lot on making sure that we're not there to punish, we're there to help. And I think the transition is going quite well at this point. I did have just simple questions. There is a kind of a provincial election going on right now. Do you think with all the choices in the future, I'm still kind of puzzled about what's going to happen with cans and deposits. Are we keeping our finger on the pulse on that situation in the event of a change of provincial government? Does that have any impacts on anything whatsoever?
Thank you for the kudos, and I just want to give kudos to all of you for providing insight to your residents regarding the launch of the 3-item limit. Provincial election and impacts to IPR. We are on the last stages of that legislative change with that full impact starting in January of 2026. We are not anticipating any changes, but we are regularly in contact with our colleagues across the province, as well as understanding on any changes or amendments to regulations that may come in order to ensure that we're best positioned to ensure seamless collection for our residents. And if there are opportunities to be engaging with members of council, if we do need to be elevating any issues, we will do so.
Right. And I think the question that I think we get sometimes too is just about are they removing the deposits from the can? Do we know a lot about how they're going to operate this? Because it's kind of a black hole for a lot of us on what they're going to do. And I love the people that come through. I sort specifically all my cans because I love when people come and collect them in the middle of the night, but maybe that won't be the future and we're going to see a big change in patterns. So do you have any comments on that?
Thank you through your chair. Thank you for the question. The bottle deposit, let's try 2 separate words there. The bottle deposit program has been put on hold. It did attempt to make a pass through provincial legislation, but did not go anywhere. So there's no further word of that. So your cans and bottles that are not currently have a deposit on them will continue to go in your blue bin, in our blue bin item.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And I also, the yellow bag program obviously is, have we seen a lot of uptick? I keep reminding people, go see our good friend Shirley at Home Depot. She'll gladly set you up. And is that going well? Are people having a good understanding of that?
Yes, it is going extremely well. So we get reports from our colleagues in Rec and Culture on the sale of those items in our recreation facilities, and we are seeing them out on the street. So very happy to see that residents are making use of those if necessary or aligning with the 3 items.
Excellent. And the last question, we've spoken a little bit about the yellow bags. Obviously, Trail Road, people can't just drive in there with their yellow bags and drop them off. Is this something that we're looking at for regional at some point, maybe possibly in the future for people that miss that every second week and now it's turned into a month where they can, if they're paying for the tipping fee on the yellow bag, is there a possibility of having a East End location drop if people feel that crazy that they can't hold on to it for a couple of weeks?
Thank you for that question. So at this point, we could explore that through a review of the yellow bag program.
Great.
But recognizing having depots in different areas, there are a lot of environmental compliance responsibilities that would be outside of the scope. But certainly we can take away the question regarding the possibilities of the residential yellow bag program.
Yeah, even just looking at it, at least we're open to ideas and helping and working with the public. So thank you again for all the work.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. What was my question? Oh, right. The provincial mandate when it comes to the full transition to IPR eventually. How much input would our city and I guess any municipality in the province have in terms of the way, you know, because we get a lot of questions about things flying around on windy days. Our bins are small, relatively speaking, compared to the amount of recyclables. And now with a lot of home delivery stuff, whether it's just stuff or actual services like meal delivery stuff, there's a lot of material now in people's blue bins and black bins. And so on windy days, it tends to fly around. So there have been, at least for me, a lot of questions about, hey, can we get bigger bins? Can we get bins with lids like the carts and everything, right? These are available for sale at home hardware, hardware stores, not specific to home hardware, but hardware stores. But anyway, is there room for input are they listening? Does the province listen to cities? Can we provide input, especially as the transition sort of completes, to make like a certain type of bin default that would be better for our streets?
Thank you for the question. So currently, the City of Ottawa participates in a monthly group with other municipalities in order to share perspectives and insights. So then that way, information can be provided up in a more collaborative and cohesive manner. On having that collaboration will continue moving forward. It's certainly something that we have brought forward, wanting residents have provided us feedback of wanting to have bins with lids. Under our bylaw currently, they are able to, it's just that we are not providing them. Andrew, do you want to speak on further collaborate efforts?
We are in transition right now. As you know, our collection contract is with Circular Materials, and we subcontract to our current collectors, as we presented to council a couple of years ago. What that does mean is when we get resident inquiries and suggestions about bins, those are going directly to Circular Material through us. So we are continuing. We have a daily conversation with our contract manager. And we provide that information directly to Circular Materials, and we will continue to do so through transition when the conversation will then become a direct conversation. So I know that bin size and type is always on the agenda, and we do provide resident feedback to Circular Materials.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yeah, thank you. The 3-item limit has gone pretty well. The biggest complaints I got was that people had attached lids to their containers, and apparently that's been on the books for a long time, but it wasn't enforced until the 3-bag limit came. Is that still going to continue? Because I think you were just sort of referring to that. I'm sorry if I missed that. But that was actually one of the biggest issues because of animals getting into containers. So that was the reason for having to have attached lids. And I don't know if there's any change on that. And also the fact that there was no 140-liter containers around. And I don't know if that's updated. I haven't checked recently if that's if they're available.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. I'll start with the attached lid. The attached lid is still required to be removable by the curbside collectors. It's a safety issue, and it's something that we're mandating. We thank the residents so much. The compliance in this area has been fantastic. People have found ways to remove their lids and have the solution of being able to put them on and have them be removable. So a huge kudos to all the residents who are working hard at making sure that their lids are removable. As for the size containers, you will notice in your local home hardwares, the up to 140s are much more available now. Residents are again doing a great job to make sure that their item limits are within the limits. and we really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Those were the things that were the sticklers, the 3 items, everybody got it. So that was fine. In terms of parks, it's really appreciated that the program is expanding, particularly for the larger parks, the destination parks like Britannia and Andrew Hayden, which get a lot of garbage, and really appreciate the moving forward on recycling for those bigger parks, because you only have to see them on a Monday morning after a busy weekend to know that there's a lot of garbage, and just encouraging people to take things home is good as well. So, but hoping to have more movement on those destination parks. Any comments on that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, that'll be part of the strategy that we bring forward this fall. We do recognize that those venues are a large draw for our residents, and as a result, wanting to ensure that we're able to provide the same options that we do in some of our smaller parks. So certainly that will be coming forward with that as part of the Parks and Waste strategy.
Thank you. I think it's a good sign that residents are asking for recycling. So appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I just have a couple of quick questions, and just want to thank you as well for all the work. The first is on the same day collection of the blue and black boxes in coordination with the province and their collector. I think that's been resolved, that this is something that we would see, or hopefully on the same day as someone would put out their garbage, so that we don't have, say, 2 different collection days in 1 week for residents.
Thank you for the question. So certainly that is our desire, and we're working closely and hard with Circular Materials, as Andrea mentioned, as well as our collector Miller in this case.
Okay.
So we'll be reporting back on that.
Yeah, that's crucially important, because it would really affect a lot of people if they are having to put it out twice in a week. They already know that day that they're supposed to put it out, and they put everything out at once, and we won't want to change that. So that's crucially important. Thanks for your work so far on that. As soon as we hear back as a confirmation, I'm sure all of council would love to hear that. How is the green bin and multi-res going? That's been a big strategy. I know we've done a lot of work to make that a reality here. How are things going there?
Thank you for the question. So yes, onboarding of the green bins and our multi-res properties is progressing well. Those educational assistants who are getting out there and having the conversations with the residents certainly is helpful. So we are progressing with our tier 1 properties, and we are seeing a positive uptake in that.
That's great. Good to see. And I know another colleague asked about the parks, and 3 streaming parks remains a big want for a lot of councillors and people that attend our parks. So happy to hear about a forthcoming strategy, more green bins in parks, more three stream wherever possible. So I guess with that, any other further comments or anything else to mention before we end? Not seeing any other councillor questions. Great job. Thank you for all the work and for the work to come this year. So is that received? Okay, great. So we're now moving on to a motion that I had put forward actually in November. So I'm going to pass the chair over to Vice Chair Carr.
Thank you very much, Chair. So at this time, I'll have you introduce your motion.
Sure. I'll just read in the therefore be it resolves, because I had done this back in November, but it's that the infrastructure and Water Services Department be directed to explore opportunities for funding, collaboration, and implementation of municipal retrofits internally and with FCM, Hydro Ottawa, Invari, and the federal and provincial governments to ensure alignment of objectives and the best opportunities to benefit the City of Ottawa. 2, that the Infrastructure and Water Services Department be directed to research alternative parameters, including longer-term savings and GHG reductions for the municipality by modification of the payback term to reframe the terms of the Energy and GHG Reduction Program, and that staff report back to Environment and Climate Change Committee by Q3 2025 with recommended funding sources, terms, and associated benefits. So it would be some work to come, and I understand staff are doing some of this in any event at this time, Chair. And I'll just mention, one of the reasons why I'm excited about this motion is that buildings represent a big portion of potential savings and our emissions. And up to this point, staff have done a great job of identifying municipal building retrofits which fit under the current criteria, which is an 8-year payback timeline. I want to see that payback timeline grow so that even if we're saving money, say over 10 years, over 15 years, still worthwhile to do an inventory of those buildings to come back and achieve those municipal retrofits, as well as some other lighting solutions. There's a lot of like field lighting and other things like that we can get better at by installing LED and have a payback to the city over time. So that's the intent of the motion. I think over the last 14 years, the city's invested a total of $32 million in energy and GHG reduction projects, which have led to $43.5 million in savings. So truly a payback to the city over time. And those assets represent a big opportunity for us to show some more leadership on this, including steps to meaningful emissions reductions and those long-term savings in energy efficiency. So that was the purpose of the motion. And Chair, there'll be other information coming back if we pass this today from staff in Q3.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. Are there any questions for the Chair on this item?
Great. Thank you, Chair. Forgive.
Sorry, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Curry did have her hand up, so I'll go to her first, and then we'll go to you if that's okay.
Councillor Carr, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My only question to staff is staff not already doing all of these things? I'm just wondering if this motion is necessary. My understanding that staff have been directed to do this already.
Madam Chair, yes, this is work that's currently in progress, and we're happy to provide a report by Q3.
So we don't need a motion?
We currently don't have a direction to bring a report back. So if the motion stands, then that would provide that direction to provide a report to Committee and Council.
Okay, I find it hard to believe you wouldn't report to us on any of this ever, but anyway, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. We'll go to Councillor Tierney now.
Great. Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you. I think this is important. I was actually at New Brunswick last week with Minister Guilbeault, and we were talking about FCM's great work and the Green Municipal Fund. Remember, it's $1 billion tranche of money that's there that we can access municipalities across the country. I think resiliency is one of the biggest issues that face municipalities right now. And if you saw the announcement, $30 million to build resilient communities on 30 adaptation projects, 17 studies, and 34 partner grant recipients. Ottawa was actually one of those. So I know that's probably on the radar, but this is an opportunity where other levels of government are chipping in from a national perspective to make sure that we can create resilient communities. You know, we hear about shorelines washing out on a regular basis. Let's make use of whatever money's out there. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, regular Chair, for your work on this file.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. We'll go to Councillor King now.
Thank you so much, Councillor Carr, and I just wanted to echo what Councillor Tierney had said in terms of supporting this motion. I think it's very important that this motion advances and looks at leveraging a collaborative approach, working with key partners like FCM and Hydro Ottawa locally and Invari, and looking at what other governments could provide in terms of resources to ensure that the evolution of this program continues so that we can meet our commitments, especially since this municipality had declared a climate emergency. So I think it's very important that we continue to look at the more challenging items. We have successfully captured the low-hanging fruit, but as the chair had noted, as we go forward, it's going to be more difficult, and we will have to ensure that we allocate more resources to that task. So just happy to speak in support of this motion, and also for the need, in my mind, for enhanced reporting. I think it does make sense for us to have enhanced reporting on our energy and GHG reduction programs if we are to address this climate emergency with rigor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just like my colleagues, I just want to voice my support of the motion, and even I appreciate Councillor Curry's question about the necessity of the motion if staff is already doing the work, and if what this motion does is it gives staff a firm timeline on reporting back. That to me is an accomplishment. I read with considerable envy that the city of Chicago has now converted all 411 of their municipal buildings to renewable energy. So anything that the city of Ottawa can do to begin to catch up, if that puts us on the radar for much needed federal funding, then this kind of motion and getting this kind of work accelerated and public facing is worthwhile. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. If there's no further comments or questions, is this motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Carp. That's appreciated, and thanks to everyone for their comments and staff's upcoming work on those initiatives. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. Any inquiries?
I do have an inquiry,
Okay.
Chair.
Councillor King, over to you.
So I'd like to express appreciation working with the Vice Chair on this inquiry concerning salt use on roads, sidewalks, and multiple use paths in Ottawa. There are growing concerns about road salt overuse and the environmental impacts it has from washing into our rivers and creeks and absorbing into groundwater and impacting habitat. Salt also can be damaging to our city's infrastructure. The Ottawa Riverkeeper and Ecology Ottawa have flagged that with an overconcentration of road salt and high levels of chloride found in our water systems, there will be long-term environmental consequences. I'd like to request that staff review the City of Ottawa's salt use with specific attention to its effects on local waterways. Number one, salt management plan. The city has a salt management plan, but it is not a publicly shared document. Can city staff provide an overview of the plan's main components, including how salt use is managed by operators and whether more frequent updates on total salt application can be provided? Please provide specific emphasis of addressing these questions. A, how much salt does the City of Ottawa use each winter? Request data for past 5 winters for comparison. B, how does the city decide when to switch between salt, pre-wetted salt, and grit based on temperature above -10 or below -10? And what, if any, steps do staff take to minimize environmental impact? C, what is the management plan not shared on the city's website? Like, is it readily available in municipalities such as Toronto and Mississauga? D, what steps does the city's public work department take to ensure salt standards are safe and that environment and climate change is considered? E, what steps does the city currently take to properly educate residents on the risks associated with excessive salt use on private property? F, what is the city's budget for de-icing salt grit alternatives? G, are there any locations where salt is not used for environmental reasons? 2, alternative de-icing solutions. In the past, the city has tried alternative methods, including the use of beet juice. This pilot project was ultimately not continued. Can staff share A, what lessons have been learned from previous pilot programs or research on safer alternatives to road salt? B, what factors have prevented wider implementation? C, are there any pilot programs or studies currently exploring the feasibility of alternatives like brining or pickling solutions in Ottawa? 3, OC Transpo salt use. OC Transpo has stated that they work with Public Works on proper salt use. A, how is information shared between departments and what oversight exists to ensure coordination? B, ward offices often receive reports of oversalting by OC Transpo. What factors contribute to this and how is this being addressed? C, how much salt does OC Transpo use each winter? Request data from 5 past winters. And how much money is spent on salt, grit, and de-icing? Budget to be broken down for each category. D, what does OC Transpo apply salt? Where does OC Transpo apply salt? E, what is the threshold for use? When is salt applied? For environmental concerns, oversalting has significant environmental consequences, including long-term damage to waterways, soil, and vegetation. A, what assessments have been done on the environmental impact of current salt use levels and what mitigation strategies are in place? B, how is the city monitoring the impact of road salt on Ottawa's waterways, including rivers, lakes, and groundwater? C, what steps is the city taking to mitigate the impact of salt runoff into waterways? D, is the salt-infused snow at the city's snow dumps filtered as it melts to minimize the amount of salt that goes back into the environment? And E, the Ottawa River Action Plan focuses on reducing pollutants and improving water quality, but does not currently address road salt use. Given the documented concerns about salt contamination in waterways, is there a plan to incorporate road salt management into this strategy? If not, why? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That I do see a couple just hands up on the inquiry, so happy to take those questions.
Great. Real quick, Councillor. I think a lot of this, and this is my 15 years of being a barnacle around here, I know half the questions were never doing the beet juice bedacle again, whatever you want to call it. That was horrible. But there's a lot of history. There's a lot of resources that may be required. I suggest that we sit down and have a quick history lesson maybe, and B, whatever remaining inquiries are there that we send to a Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. Clearly you have an interest in salt and how much salt is being used. So I don't know if you'd be willing to have this move to the transportation, or if we can seek the clerk's consideration, because this is really in the Public Works wheelhouse, I would believe. Looking for a ruling from the clerk or direction.
Yeah, and happy to move it over to clerks, and I would
you.
also be personally happy to have it go to both committees as a reply, because I think there's overlap. You're right, for both, but happy to hear from the clerk's office if that's feasible to have a reply at both.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, just to concur with your assessment that the response could go on to both. And no, due to the length of the inquiry, the department will also comment on whether this is significant, at which time a motion may be required.
Thank you for that. Councillor Curry, I saw you had your hand up. Maybe your question was answered, or yeah.
I was just going to ask staff the amount of work it was going to take to answer this inquiry, and exactly that. Should it be a motion?
Yeah, it is a pretty broad-based inquiry, certainly, and there's lots of important and good questions, of course, but it is work. So just over to city staff to comment on whether it is significant, and if it requires a motion to be able to undertake the answers to these questions.
So, Chair, it is a fairly significant inquiry. Now, that being said, to Councillor Tierney's point, there's a number of elements that we've already previously addressed that we would be looking to reuse. But given the timing of the year, also it's something that we definitely need leniency in terms of when we can report back on.
Okay, that's helpful context. And just to Councillor King, Vice Chair Carr, timing wise, obviously there's a lot here. Are you amenable to having a longer term?
I am amenable because I think we want to get quality data. Also amenable for this item to go to both committees. And in terms of the inquiry itself, it was directed to Public Works. So pleased to have what we're really seeking here is data in order to have a more fulsome policy debate. And we need that understanding. So I'm amenable to both.
Okay, and just to the clerk's office, do we, just given the comments from the GM, do we need a motion for this, or is it acceptable that it be just an inquiry as it is now, given there's some answers that have been given in the past?
Through you, Chair, based on the response from Mr. Gonstier, it appears this is significant. Therefore, the inquiry could be considered a notice of motion, which could come back to the next meeting for discussion and a vote.
So the next meeting would be on March 18th of environment and climate change. And we also have the Environmental Excellence Awards that day too. The other option is to move it today with the will of committee. So there's a couple of options.
Yeah, maybe the clerk, if this is seen as a motion, I'm just debating would it be notice of motion to transportation? Sorry, Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, or would it be dealt with here at the next Environment Committee meeting? Because I really have a concern about this one, about the number of resources when there's literally like 30 questions here that could be solved by an email or a discussion. So maybe the mover of the inquiry wishes to withdraw it. Otherwise, I would move to put this on the table today and we table it and we vote if it's not going to go to Public Works.
Okay, so currently there's a inquiry on the table. Staff have told us it has to be a motion. It's any member's prerogative with which to put the motion forward, or perhaps give a notice of motion. There are a number of options that could also happen. So if you'd like to turn it into a notice of motion, that's possible, and it's at whatever committee you'd like to put it forward at. But I think Councillor Tierney, the response about going to both committees makes sense no matter what.
The response, right. But the actual vote should take place at Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. I'm looking at the clerk's office. I mean, you really look at it cites Public Works within the actual currently inquiries soon to be motion. I wish I would have had an advanced copy. We could have determined half of this, but play silly games, win silly prizes. So are we going to deal with it today at this committee, or would it go to the other committee?
So my prerogative is that this is an overlapping issue with environment and with our roads crews, 100%. So I see what you're saying about it. But I think from my prerogative, it would be in order to give a notice of motion here with the response going to both for any action in the future. This is an environmental issue as well. And we're hearing people raise this as an environmental issue. So,
and I would opt for this being a notice of motion.
Okay, and that makes sense as long as I think that response can go to both committees, as Councillor Tierney's indicated. So, just to clerks then, so it would go a notice of motion, and it would come back to the next committee. If there is a notice of motion put on the Transportation Committee or Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, it could also be considered there. So I think we can work with the clerks offline, but for now, giving a notice of motion gives us some time to work through that. So as a notice of motion then from Councillor King on the inquiry, I don't think clerks needs any more than that, or do you require anything else? You're good? Okay. Perfect. So formally moved as a notice of motion. Are there any other business for today? No? Okay. So we're adjourned. The next meeting is on Tuesday, March 18th. It'll be held in council chambers to allow for more room for those attending the Environmental Excellence Awards, which I always look forward to, and I hope to see everybody there, ideally in person, just because those awards are such a fun time. So thanks, everyone. Good to see you all. Have a good day.